The program. My name is Audrey Chimwanda. On today's topic, we're discussing the Zanu PF People's Conference. It is the 22nd. It is expected to happen in a few days' time. Now, this is a very important political day when it comes to Zimbabwe's political scene. And this is because this is when the ruling party gets to look back, introspect, and take a look at how far they've come when it comes to their performance. They get an opportunity also to set the way forward and to outline some of the new policies and priorities that they may have. A lot of questions are coming around this particular People's Conference. Some think perhaps it is an opportunity for the party to consolidate its power and to rally behind their leader. But is that the actual opportunity to do this? Well, to help us unpack, I'm with Mr. Mawarire. Most of you will know him as a former journalist, but for today's program, he is going to be talking to us as a political analyst. Mr. Mawarire, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for your time. Now, your voice on the political scene is not a muted one. You're very vocal. You have a lot of opinions, and you're always able to stand on your 10 feet when it comes to some of the opinions, controversial, some may say. But when it comes to this particular conference, what do you think is the agenda? What can we expect to come out of it?
The agenda is there in the public domain. They've said they are going to implement the Bulawayo 2024 resolution number 1, which attempts to extend the tenure of office of the president up to 2030. So that's what we're getting.
Right.
And those are the sentiments that are coming from Zanu PF, from the 10 provinces. We are saying, we are hearing that everyone is rallying with the 2030 agenda.
Is that the case, though? Because if I remember last year, it seems that there were divergent voices, some that were for the 2030, some were not. But with the party leader himself, Idi Munangagwa, saying, look, if the people want me to continue, I will do that. But at this moment, I have no intentions of going forward. Can we expect a united voice when it comes to that, getting into this particular conference? And how can we expect that to impact the political scene going forward?
What is shocking, Audrey, is that even at Bulawayo in 2024, we saw the submission by the then legal secretary, Patrick Chinamasa, that it was actually very difficult to implement the resolution there to extend the president's tenure in office to 2030. And he said that if Zanu PF was going to take that route, they needed 2 referendums to implement that provision. So we actually also learned in one of the Politburo meetings that Chinamasa said it categorically clear that resolution number 1 was unimplementable legally. But we shudder when we see that that's the resolution that is being pushed around for this particular conference. And not only that, it has been preceded by the dismissal, the constructive dismissal of the then Secretary General, Obet Mpofu, followed by the dismissal of the Zanu PF Director General, General Zabayana. So you are going towards a conference that is supposed to deliberate on a controversial issue, which the party's legal affairs secretary said is unimplementable legally. And then you see people being shifted from one office, some being dismissed outrightly, and you wonder what's there.
Yeah. Would that be a purging of dissenting voices, so to speak, getting into this conference? And what is the constitutional implications of such a scenario if it were to go ahead?
There are a lot of it, and there are also a lot of nefarious activities that are going on, because the push to extend the president's stay in office is not only coming from these so-called Zanu PF resolutions, which have been deemed legally unimplementable. But now there is a new dimension to it, because there are now groups, there are now even South African registered political consultancy firms that are led by some Zimbabweans who ostensibly on the outside appear to be pro-democratic individuals. And they are pushing now, they are the ones now pushing in and advising the Zimbabwe parliament on how to implement the legally unimplementable resolution number 1. And this is being done by some organization that is called the Shikamo, which is registered in South Africa. And that organization is actually contracted Professor Jonathan Moyo to smuggle in a document to Parliament, purporting that this document contains the sentiments that are coming from the people. And those sentiments are supposed to push an agenda. They are supposed to push a motion in Parliament, which is called the Breaking of Barriers Initiative. And
this is supposed to be some leaked document. Talk us through that document, and what are the key takeaways that as you are going through it, that you would like to share with us today, and what we can expect from that particular document, should any of them be implemented at all?
Yeah, that document talks about, it's an attempt actually to legally, so to speak, extend the president's term of office by amending Section 92 of the Constitution. Section 92 of the Constitution talks about the president being directly elected by all the people, all the registered voters in Zimbabwe. So the repeal of Section 92, which is being pushed by that document, would then end in a situation where the president will be elected only by Parliament. So the MPs are the ones that will sit and elect a president. So the thinking is that if that constitutional amendment goes through, it has the legal effect of ending the president's term, current term. And the drafters of that document anticipated that the document will be fully functional by the 22nd of December this year.
Okay, let's go back to the ending of the presidential term. Would that then happen immediately, therefore allowing the president to have a fresh term going forward?
Yeah, that's what they're pushing. That's what they're pushing. They are anticipating that once that constitutional change is implemented, is adopted and ascended to by the same president, then it has the legal effect of ending his current term. And it will end the current term at 2 years, 3 months. That would not constitute a full term. So what would then follow is that from the 22nd of December 2025, the president would assume a new 5-year mandate, and that new 5-year mandate takes him to 2030. That's what it does. But it doesn't. But it also doesn't address the issue that if it ends the president's term of office, it should, by operation of law, also end the term of office of the current parliament, because the Section 95 is very clear that the term of office of parliament runs coterminously with the term of office of the president. So if you end the term of office of the president, surely you should end the term of office of parliament. And in such a situation, then we should go for general elections. But the drafters of this document don't want to go for elections. They have actually proposed that they implement what they call a deeming provision. A deeming provision is a provision at law which is supposed to effect a legal fiction. It's a dishonest way of forcing illegalities on people, and these deeming provisions were normally being used by the colonial regimes.
And I absolutely have to ask you this. I think when we began this conversation, I spoke about how part of this conference is for members to gather and endorse a party leader and also rally around them going forward. And looking at President Edi Mnangagwa, do you think he's motivated to continue with his leadership, with his presidency of the country? And if so, why do you think his intent on perhaps not having elections, or to maybe circumvent the constitution and extend his presidential term?
He's certainly motivated to stay in power for as long as is possible. And if his plan succeeds, you will end up having him until 2035. And that will be 18 years uninterrupted. And that is motivated by his desire to continue looting the state, his desire to protect what he has already looted. And in actual fact, this is a push towards not even a third term, but beyond, because 18 years will be going towards the fourth term. And this is motivated by criminality, because the guy has accumulated a lot of wealth, and he knows that along the way, and mind you, ED has been there for the last 45 years. He knows along the way there are issues to do with Gukurahundi, issues to do with human rights violations that he wants to run away from. So this one is a very good cover for him to go for as long as possible. And I'm actually thinking that this guy is pushing towards dying in office. Because if you look at 2035, how old will he be? And is it likely that he will be alive that time?
Do you think he's created enough enemies that he would rather stay in power to ensure that he consolidates his allies?
Of course, he has done that. A lot of people are not happy with how he has been running the country. A lot of people are not happy with his participation in the Gukurahundi. A lot of people are also not happy about even what he did shortly after he took over power. You know, the 1 August 2018 killings of people in front of international television cameras. Those are serious human rights violations that any sane-thinking people would know, or person would know, that one day I will be held accountable. So the plan is to stay for as long as is possible in office and anticipate that the guy dies in power. But he might have also plan B, which will be to anoint someone who is amenable to him, Kudagwa Shetagwirei, for that matter. Others are proposing that he wants the current Commander Defense Forces, Valerio Sibanda.
Yes, what then happens to that dynamic? Because ordinarily, the vice president will then ascend the throne, so to speak, and become the president. Why is that dynamic unlikely in this scenario this time?
The Sibanda dynamic?
No, the Chiwenga.
No, but the Chiwenga dynamic is not unlikely. It is one of the options. It's one of the contending ideas that are running parallel with the 2030 agenda. Those that don't want the 2030 agenda are looking at the vice president as the likely successor, General Chiwenga. And the generality of the people of Zimbabwe are warming up to the vice president. He's talking about corruption. He's talking about Zimbabweans benefiting from their own national resources. He has actually hit the right chord, and the guy has certainly become quintessentially presidential. And if you listen to his speeches, they are very pro-people, pro-development, and he has actually managed to transform himself from an army general to a very serious and credible politician that a lot of people and a lot of Zimbabweans are looking forward to and actually anticipating that he takes over the state.
Let me ask you this question. Breaking Barriers Initiative, is President Idi Mnangagwa a stakeholder in this?
Yes, he's very involved. If you read the paper that was presented in the Politburo, he was asked why he didn't inform other members of the Presidium about the existence of this document. He is very much in the know, and if you look at it, the provisions to repeal Section 92 of the Constitution is supposed to benefit him. It's supposed to make him automatically elected onto another 5-year term. So he is very much involved in this. And the people that are funding this project are his people, the same criminals that are surrounding him.
Look, some people would argue to say, look, we've had elections, democratic elections, so to speak, in Zimbabwe for the longest of times. And PF has been in power. We've had the government of national unity at some point. And people are losing faith. They tell you, there's so much apathy when you look at the numbers when people go to the polls. Some would argue that perhaps it's time to take a step back and not hold elections in Zimbabwe. The previous elections, 2023, highly contested. We heard what SADC said when it came to their electoral report, very controversial. Is it perhaps time to just put up some brakes when it comes to elections, look at the reforms that Zimbabwe needs to make sure that they go into a legitimate electoral process, that everyone who takes part, all the stakeholders can walk away saying this was a legitimate process?
I think what needs to be done is to effect electoral reforms. And you don't need 10 years to effect electoral reforms. In fact, we are less than 3 years into the current term of office of the current president. And we have time, actually, to do electoral reforms if we wanted to genuinely do electoral reforms. Because what is ironic is that if this president is a result of a contested election, then who wants him for the next 10 years? Certainly, if he's a byproduct of a contested election, you can't have a president who has been illegitimately installed into office by a shambolic election to go on for 10 years. Why reward him for that?
Okay, so how does that agenda tie into what is likely to happen at the Zanu-PF People's Conference?
This document that is pushing for the suspension of elections, actually the institution that has brought about this document is crafted in the style of Arben Menashe's Nikuv. You know, they are trying to Nikuv the Zimbabwean constitution by suspending elections, banning elections for the next 10 years. And one wonders why banning elections for 10 years? Because if you are saying we are having problems with our elections, surely even the SADC report put some recommendations. And electoral reforms don't take a decade to be effected.
How do you implement electoral reforms in Zimbabwe with a parliament that is constituted in the way that it is, mostly by Zanu-PF members of parliament? How would you see that panning out?
No, but this document is also being pushed by Zanu-PF people and former Zanu-PF people that they've consulted. Professor Jonathan Moyo is consulting on this document, and you wonder if there is honesty behind a sustained attack on our constitution with the thinking that we are trying to detoxify our national politics. How do you detoxify your politics by suspending elections? You can't do that. You know, if you have a running tummy, you don't go on a 40-day fast in order to cure a running tummy. That's not how you cure a running tummy. You go to a doctor, and the doctor runs tests on you to find out what is really wrong, and he attends to that. You don't say, because I have a running tummy, so I cure the running tummy by not eating for the next 40 days.
Yeah. Perhaps the question
irrational.
I should be asking is, who are these people? Who are the authors of this Breaking Barriers initiative?
The author is Professor Jonathan Moyo, commissioned by an organization called Shikamo, which I said is styled in the same way Ari Ben Menashe styled the Nikuv political consultancy firm.
But
And this has been doing a lot of work in Malawi. It has been doing work in Lesotho. And some of the things that you shudder to think about, wherever this organization has been involved, somewhere you have had coups in Malawi, you have had a disputed election that was nullified by the courts. But this organization was involved in campaigning there, in managing the voters' roll. You see, and these are the same characters now that are trying to smuggle in a document to Zimbabwe, ostensibly to detoxify our elections by recommending a process that will stop, ban elections for 10 years in Zimbabwe. And you know how they are going to do it? You know, they said we are going to have a consultative process. We will consult the Zimbabweans. But what they have done is that they want to roll out a process where they invite people to their discussions, and they make people win laptops, they make people win cell phones, they say high-end smartphones, and they want people to win cars. There are 11 cars. They propose that there will be 11 cars. So it's a competition. It's like a road show that they want to roll out, all in the name of consulting people. How do you consult people on national matters and you incentivize them? You say, come, you sit down, you talk about our politics, and you have a chance to win a laptop. You have a chance to win a smartphone. You have a chance to win a car. Simply, this idea of moving around, giving out people, giving people cars, we know where it is coming from. And you really shudder to think, is this a democratic process? What is it supposed to achieve when you are paying people to come and gather?
So what I'm understanding from what you're saying is there's a massive buy-in from within the ZANU-PF party when it comes to this document at what it intends to achieve going forward. Some might argue that within ZANU-PF itself, it appears there are fissures. Would it then be a broad church of people in ZANU-PF accepting this document?
There's no massive buy-in, because we have seen, actually today, we have seen actually documents that are flying around that are purported to have been presented in the Politburo in ZANU-PF, where members of the Presidium were complaining about the same document and saying, this document is being clandestinely, being introduced at the conference, when it has never been discussed in the Politburo, it has never been discussed in the Central Committee, the highest decision-making body in between congresses. It hasn't been discussed there. So it's a nefarious activity that is being funded by people who have seen that there is a chance to loot national resources in Zimbabwe, and therefore they have ganged up with the so-called Ziganandas, those that have been massively looting the state in Zimbabwe. And those people are in a rush, in a bid, in a sustained effort to maintain the status quo.
Who are these people?
You have Kudako Shetagwire, you have Chivayo, they are mentioned in that political document that was leaked today. And
what key roles do they play within this agenda? Of course, we've seen the likes of Chivayo, Kudatagure himself, as you've already alluded to, very big spenders, very, some would say buyers, whether it is for the political parties, ZANU-PF, or the electorate. These are things that are happening within the public space, and it makes people wonder where all this money is coming from. Would that be a part of this agenda?
You can actually see by the idea that they are incentivizing people with cars, 11 cars, and it's nobody's guessed where the cars are coming from. Why giving people cars if you are doing national consultation and you are consulting Zimbabweans on matters that are foundational, matters that are existential? Why do you need to incentivize them with cell phones, with laptops, with cars? So you can see that Chigananda mentality that has been so pervasive and that has been insanely exhibited by people like Chivayo is the one that is contained in that document. It's unfortunate that people like Professor Jonathan Moyo have been robbed into such a nefarious activity to butcher our constitution and to actually ensure that the Zimbabwean people are demobilized politically. Because if you don't participate in regular, free and fair elections as a citizen, what chance do you have in having your voice heard and also in choosing your national leaders? This is one of the most unfortunate assaults on our constitution that has happened since 2013.
I'm just looking at the Zimbabwean electorate, and it's quite a polarized society when we look at the numbers when we have elections. And I'm just wondering what agencies Zimbabweans have, those that are eligible to vote or those that participate in their civic duties when information such as the one that you're releasing gets into their ears. How would you frame that?
The unfortunate thing, Audrey, is that this document also is actually pushing, is recommending that those that are against this agenda have to be crowded out, and they have to be they have to be attacked, and they should be bashed. The objective of the document is to push for an illegal extension of the president's term of office, and at the same time silencing every other voice. It's recommended in the document that every other voice that is negative, according to them, that is anti this proposal, has to be silenced, has to be crowded out, and has to be drowned. It's a strategy that this document actually adopts on those that ideally should have come out and say, but why are we changing some of the things that we changed through COPAC? For instance, this document requires that, proposes that we change, we remove the custody of the voters' roll from the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission and get it back to the Registrar General's office. This had been a very huge and contentious issue previously. And this was addressed by the COPAC process and the 2013 constitution. But you have people, ostensibly very educated Zimbabweans, now saying, let's go to the issues that were dividing us before 2013. At the same time, they are purporting that this document is supposed to detoxify our elections. It's an oxymoron. It's ironic that the same things that divided us yesterday, and we thought we had solved them through the 2013 constitution. Someone is proposing that let's go back to where we were fighting. Let's go back to those issues that were dividing us. But yet, still purport that you want to bring in change. You want to bring in change that will detoxify our political discourse.
You say the major authors of this Breaking Barriers initiative are coming from outside of the borders. Former ministers that are now living in exile. Jonathan Moyo, we speak of. Walter Mzembe, who's in prison now in Zimbabwe.
I don't think
Xavier Kasukuwere. Are those the voices that are a threat to Zimbabwe's democracy at the moment?
No. Those other two guys are not involved in this document. The chief culprits is Professor Moyo and a guy called Glenn Mopani. Those are the ones that are pushing this, contracted by Taguire, and unfortunately being supported by the Swiss embassy.
How do you see this People's Conference panning out once all these issues are put forward and discussed when it comes to policy formulation, with the party looking at the direction they're taking just before the elections, if at all they happen, because it is your view that the actual agenda is to ensure that there are no elections?
Yeah, I don't know whether these guys are going to succeed because it's a legal minefield that they are tackling, and some of the proposals are very disingenuous and very criminal, to say the least, and some of them actually border on political mischief, because really, when I was reading this document, I was trying to wrap my mind around it and try to get into the mind of the person who was drafting this thing and saying, why would someone want to assault his country and the democratic processes in his country in such a way? Is it money that is incentivizing people to do these shameful things? And I don't see anyone in his right mind, even in Zanu PF, who would actually want to go and run along with these kind of proposals, unless those people are getting some monetary values. Because they are, even some of the authors of this document, I've tried to engage them. And the first thing they have exhibited is to try to run away from this document by saying it's an old document, now we have changed this, we have changed this. But I've asked them, but in the first place, when you were coming up with this kind of a document, what was the thinking? What was the motivation? What did you want to achieve? Why do you hate your country so much to an extent that you want to make sure that your fellow citizens no longer have a right to choose a government of their choice? And if your argument is that the elections have been contentious, why not just focus on electoral reforms? Ensure that campaigning in Zimbabwe is free and fair. Ensure that ZEC is independent. It's not populated by people of dubious backgrounds and dubious characters. People who have been associated with all these disputed elections. Why don't you remove them? You remove those people from that institution. Because even if they are good guys, they are associated by bad things that have been happening in that institution. Remove them. Bring in fresh ideas, bring in professionals, bring in people who want really to make sure that the elections are democratic, free and fair, and the results are acceptable and won't lead to a toxic political discourse for the next 5 years. You start with that. You don't say because we didn't run our elections well last time, so we are postponing the elections. Because by postponing elections, you are giving these guys another mandate. You are actually rewarding them for running undemocratic elections. So what stops the next guy who comes in to say, okay, I've seen that this works, let's run shambolic elections and make people complain. After they've complained, we say, oh, we are banning elections because we are doing reforms. Then the cycle will go on and on and on. And the justification for illegal term extensions will be shambolic elections.
How powerful do you think Kudatagure's constituency is when it comes to Zimbabwe? I'm talking in terms of influence. Of course, we've spoken about the monetary value that perhaps he brings to the table when it comes to shaping some of these policies and having influence on state actors.
I don't understand what you call his constituencies.
This is what I'm trying to understand. Does he have one at all?
Maybe his constituencies are just greedy politicians who have no business legitimate business running, but who want to live luxurious lives. And I don't think that's what defines Zimbabweans. It's a small clique of people who are by nature wired towards criminality. And I think that's his constituents. And unfortunately, it cuts across different educational backgrounds. You even now see professors, some of the guys there with masters in one field or the other, joining the gravy train. So I don't think that small cabal of greedy people define what Zimbabweans are. And if that is Tagure's constituency, unfortunately fortunately it is very small, but they are vocal because they have money.
Right. What should we look out for coming out of the Zanu PF National People's Conference? Because whether we like it or not, this is Zanu PF. It is the major governing party, major ruling party. We cannot ignore what happens in their party and the impact and influence that it has on the ordinary Zimbabwean.
I think the contestation has actually started playing out even before tomorrow's Politburo meeting. And we see there will be demonstrations in Harare. Some were telling me that there might be even demonstrations in Mutare. And we don't know demonstrations from which side. But definitely the contestation is heating up, and it's likely going to be a very divisive conference.
And how would you describe or characterize those divisions in terms of who's on whose side?
It's a division along those that want to stick to the Constitution and those that want to perpetuate the status quo, because the status quo enables them to loot national resources. So that's the division between thieves and good guys, so to speak.
It'll be quite interesting to see what comes out of that. But thank you so much for your analysis, Mr. Mawarire. Certainly appreciate it. You're welcome to join in the conversation and tell us what you think as we anticipate what is to come out of the ruling party Zanu PF's 22nd National People's Conference. Thank you for watching.